Hi again, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. In my first video, I mentioned a near-death experience that deeply shaped my life, and for the better. It's an experience I'll never forget and one that I'm truly grateful for. Today, I'm sharing this personal story with you as I hope it inspires you to make the most out of the time that you have on this planet. As I mentioned before, I broke out of my 9 to 5 existence, a job that started as something I was passionate about, but over time became super toxic and unbearable. And when I finally decided to leave, I had a clear plan in mind. And the first thing I chose to do was learn Spanish in Colombia. My dad was fluent in Spanish, and even though I studied it in high school, I completely dropped it when I started university. And being unilingual was always a pain point for me. I knew that if I didn't learn at least a conversational level of another language, it would be a regret I'd carry for the rest of my life. So after spending some time in Medellin learning Spanish, I was spending 2 hours a day one on one with a teacher and living my life with Colombians. I had Colombian roommates, really immersing myself in the culture and the language. I decided it was time to explore more of South America. And that brought me to Bolivia, which is one of the poorest yet most beautiful countries on the continent. Visiting it felt like taking a step back in time a little bit. The capital, La Paz, is chaotic and fascinating. It's a city that you'll see cars and donkey pulled carts sharing the same streets. It's never seen anything like that before in my life. One of the activities in the area that I was most excited about to experience was biking down Death Road, which is the world's most dangerous road. Death Road, and it's officially known in Spanish as Camino de las Yungas, is infamous for its narrow dirt path that clings to cliffs with drops of up to 2,000 feet. No joke. It's definitely not a joking matter. It's no longer a major transport route, thankfully, but the dangers remain for tourists who bike down it today. At that point in my life, I was drawn to adrenaline fueled activities, and this felt like a natural choice for me. I'd already done things like bungee jumping in Costa Rica, skeleton racing on an Olympic track, whitewater rafting in Ecuador, and multiple Tough Mudder events. So, biking down Death Road was just another thrill on my list, the latest one. However, I hadn't biked in years, and even though I signed up with a reputable tour, I skipped listening to all the safety instructions together, which was a really bad 1-2 punch to put myself into. And if you'd known me back then, this wouldn't have surprised you at all. I was a little bit of an idiot in my 20s when it came to things like safety. Um, the Death Road itself, though, is amazing. Like it's absolutely breathtaking. My video thumbnail here can give you a taste of what it looks like, but it's only a taste. I highly recommend you look up more photos of it online. It's truly one of the most stunning places I've been to. So as I was biking down Death Road, I was having the time of my life. I was going fast, but maintaining my speed well enough, and I was braking on time, handling the corners okay. All good considering I'd never biked in years, right? Like it'd been so long. Um, but then I decided to take it to the next level. I had this brilliant idea that I was going to take out my phone and start taking photos while I was biking instead of being a normal human being and stopping, taking photos, and then continuing on my journey. So while I was doing that, the next thing I knew, I was headed straight for the edge of a cliff. So I slammed on my brakes. I turned the bike the best I could horizontally to gain traction to stop. And thankfully, I came to a halt just at the edge of the cliff. So it was heavy duty experience. But if you had told me this happened to someone else and I hadn't experienced it myself, I would have guessed they would have felt terrified or had a panic attack. But that was not how I reacted at all. I actually just laughed it off. It sounds insane, but it was my mind's way of protecting myself emotionally from the trauma of almost dying, or at the very least being critically injured. So I finished the ride without incident, had a blast, completely brushed off what happened, filed it away, uh, traveled a little bit more in South America, and then made my way home. 5 or 6 years later, I was at home. I was just sitting on my bed, either journaling or playing video games on a weekend night, when that memory just flooded my mind all of a sudden, came out of nowhere. It was like a gut punch. And I remember I was just staring at my bed sheets in front of me, completely frozen. It felt like hours that I was in this frozen state. It was probably, less than 5 minutes, but it was an intense experience. And in that moment, I fully realized how close I'd come to death. My mind had locked away the emotional weight of the event, but it finally unlocked years later. From that moment on, that experience became part of my story. So it was exhibit A of how reckless I was back in the day, how I put myself in harm's way for no good reason, and ultimately how I almost died. So looking back, I'm incredibly grateful for the experience. And the reason is because firstly, I didn't die or get harmed. It was an incredible adventure, right? So it's a good story to bring back home about going down Death Road and seeing all the sights and doing that on a mountain bike. Like, it's a great story. But more importantly, it taught me just how fragile life is. No matter who you are, I don't care if you're on your deathbed or you're Vin Diesel in his prime, it really doesn't take much for someone to die. Right? We're not immortal. And it taught me that while it's important to live a life true to yourself, that's so important, that's critical for having happiness and living well, you need to do it in a sustainable way. If I went back and biked Death Road again with the same reckless behavior, I highly doubt I'd be here today. Since then, I've learned to balance my thrill seeking activities with safety in mind. So I'm not talking about just putting on a helmet. Of course, I was wearing a helmet when I was biking Death Road. I'm talking about sticking to statistically safe activities like bungee jumping or skydiving. And maybe that makes you laugh, but those, if you look up the actuary tables and the stats, those activities have very low fatality rates. Not like base jumping. Base jumping is insane. I have no interest in being a flying squirrel and putting myself at that kind of risk. Skydiving, though, I think that's something I'm going to try one day for sure. So let's turn it to you. Maybe now it's a good time for you to take an inventory of how you're living your life. Are you treating yourself with the care you deserve? I hope you are. I'm so grateful to be here to ask you that question. And I'm so grateful you're here to listen and hopefully give that some thought. What kind of experience have you ever had an experience like this, or experiences that you look back and you say, hey, that was actually a close call, but I learned something positive from it? If so, drop a comment. I'd love to hear your story. I appreciate you taking time to watch the video. Like and subscribe if you found it helpful, and I'll see you in the next one.